afternoon, good evening, good morning. This is Senior Issues, etc. I say all these different times because the show is seen in so many different places at so many different times. I'm your host, Vita Burden, and I have kind of a different show tonight. This is a memorial for our colleague, our esteemed colleague, Selby Hussey, who was with us from the beginning, the origin of the show in the year 2000. And he passed on January 1st, 2013. And we're giving a little memorial, and I have three other ladies here with me who each knew him on a kind of a different basis. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of gab about it and give our memories of him, because he was such a unique English gentleman. You know, he's worthy of a little type of memorial. So as I say, you know, he passed on when he was 89 years old. His birthday was in June, and he was with, when we started the show, the producer, Gloria Shapiro, and myself, Vita Burden, and Selby. He came with us. That I'm the president and Gloria is the vice president, and Selby was the treasury and secretary and man about everything. And so I'd like to first of all introduce my guests, and then they're going to tell a little bit about themselves, and we're going to gab a little bit about Selby. But first I'd like to introduce my guests. I have with me to my right, with the lovely purple sweater on, Vera Butkovich, and she is, of course, the president from the Senior Center in Libertyville, Illinois, and next to her is a member of the Senior Council who knew Selby in a different aspect. She's a member on the Senior Council, Norma Kick, and next to Norma sits Carol Lopez, who kind of runs the Senior Center, but she's also a board member of the Senior Council. So what I'll do is I'm going to start. When we started the show, this television show, which, you know, it's developed beyond our expectations, it was just kind of given to us as an experiment, and you know that it has grown on its own, and with the effort that's put in. And it was Selby, Gloria, and myself. But Selby's past experience is that he was a medical supply salesperson. So he was the only one that had a computer at that time. And I'll tell you something, that he was very quick-witted. He was a very smart man, for one thing. And he not only knew the computer, you know, I do the computer like this. That's how he did the computer way back then. But he was very good at organizing things and writing letters. And when we had to apply for our 501c3, which is a non-for-profit status, you know, and none of us had done this before, so we all had to stumble further. But he was a good speller. He had really good grammar, and he was so beneficial. He was such a help in doing this, you know, that it took the three of us to put it all together. But he led the pack in that because he had more experience in doing this in the business world than we did. And so I'm going to leave it off because I want to get the other gals here into it. So Vera, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and then your connection with Selby?
Okay, I'm president of the Senior Council, and my first experience with Selby when I became president, he was secretary, and he just automatically wanted to sit on my right because that was the proper thing to do. Yeah. I had to always sit on my right. And what was astonishing, when he was starting to get sick, he never missed a meeting. He always wanted to be there, to the point where I would be picking him up. And, you know, another member would be dropping them off after our meetings.
But I can understand what you're saying, because I think that even when he was really ill, he went in sheer determination.
Correct, he did.
Yeah, and it was like he could will it, and he set his will, and he could do that.
Right, very, he loved doing volunteering.
Now, Norma, why don't you just tell them, like who you are again and your connection with Selby.
Yeah, I'm Norma Kick, and I'm a member of the Senior Council. The first time I met Selby was when I joined the Senior Council. He was secretary, and I'm currently the treasurer, so we have worked together on ideas and things. But my most poignant memory of Selby is meeting him in Cook Park. He used to come over from where he lived on Cook and sit on a bench, and if I were coming through the park, I would sit down with him, and we talked about everything. He was so conversant about anything that you mentioned. It didn't matter. We stayed away from rough subjects, but he was just that kind of a man. If I met him in the grocery store, he would stop and talk. And he met my son, and he stopped and talked. He just was very, very nice. And I also have a friend who, Selby was a sponsor for him in their quest, and he speaks very highly of Selby. Everybody I know speaks highly of Selby.
Yeah, he was just that kind of unique, quick-witted English gentleman.
Yes,
That's how I would profile him. And Carol, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and some anecdotes about Selby?
Well, I'm Carol Lopez, and I'm the director of the Libertyville Senior Center. And one of my first experiences with Selby is he came into the office, to the Senior Center office, and introduced himself and gave me a great big hug. And one part of Selby's personality and his heart and soul, I think, is that he had the ability to make everyone's life that he touched feel comfortable, fulfilled, and at ease, and cared about. And no matter what was going on in Selby's life, you might not know what was going on in his life, but he was always interested in what was going on in your life. As sick as Selby got, he never complained. He always had something good to say about someone. And at one time in our exchanges, I said to him, I am so honored to be a part of your life and that you are a part of mine, because I'm learning how to be more of a positive person. In all his trials and tribulations, he was positive, and he always had a gentle touch for someone and was always helpful to other people. I never heard him complain about anything. He used to bring in, he used to do on the computer, you mentioned the computer. On the computer, he'd make these beautiful cards, and he'd bring them in for the Senior Council, and then the Senior Center members. Everyone would get a birthday card. So he made them, brought them in, and then one of the other Senior Council members would address them and send them out. It was just, in everything, Selby had a special touch for each individual's life he touched. He knew something special about you, and he wanted to fulfill that. He just was a very gentle, loving, caring person, and I am so honored to be here to honor him.
I know that he had a lot of problems, and he was a very active member in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's another group. But one of the things that I want to mention is at his funeral mass, and he was cremated and he's buried up in Delafield, Wisconsin, because he had lived there for a while, that the church holds about 150 people. It's a small Episcopal church in Lake Villa, and they expected, maybe 50 to 75, and there was anywhere from 2 to 250. It was standing room only, and everybody was astonished. But that is relative to this eclectic personality that he had, which outreached and wasn't confined to one segment of people or one class of people. Because one of the things that I noticed at his funeral memorial that it wasn't confined to senior people. There were people of all ages, and wasn't mostly male. It was male and female, and you could have, as a female, could have a genuine friendship with him. But I enjoyed his daughter got up and gave a little talk about him, and there was this part of Selby, and I know because I ran into it myself in our dealings with helping build this television show, is a very strong will. And he said to his daughter said to him, well, I know you're right most of the time. Are you right all the time? He said, no. Once I was wrong, but then after I thought about it, I wasn't wrong at all. I was right. So I guess you could say that I was right all the time. Now, I know part of that was tongue-in-cheek, in jest. Part of that was his personality, but another part of it, I think he meant it, because him and I locked horns about the directions or problems that we should solve about the show. But somehow, in the relationship, we managed to work it out, and I think it was on growing that it caused both of us to grow. And, I am grateful for that. Now we're going to just pause for a minute because I'm going to take time to do Vita's Pearls of Wisdom. Now, in my Pearls of Wisdom today, I'm breaking away from it because I want to give a little commercial for the website. The direction that this show has taken, it has taken on a life of its own. So it's seen in Lake County, Illinois, and it's also seen in Vernon Hills, which has its own cable system, and it's seen in Evanston and 25 miles around. In Evanston, it's seen 3 times a week, and in Lake County, it's seen at 8 p.m. on Channel 17 on Tuesday night. In Evanston, it's seen on Channel 4 Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in Vernon Hills, it's seen on Wednesday. But also, it's taken on a whole new life online. Who knew online would go bigger than, on cable access? So online, we're seeing, and if you go to our website, it's Senior Issues, etc., etc.org. All right, now as you go onto the website, what you do is you scroll down, and as you scroll down, you press shows, and we have a lineup. I don't know exactly, but it's probably approximately about 30 shows online, and it's categorized by subject matter of the show. Also, what I would like to promote a little bit and tell you about is we do a blog on every single show that's on. So after this scrolling down on the shows, you can scroll down and just press blog, and it will be the whole listing of blogs. Now, the thing that I like to emphasize today, because, after 13 years, I've listened to and I appreciate all the correspondence I've got through email, through the telephone calls, through the letters that you've written me. So I try to direct the show like unto you. But on the blog, there's one section that says comments. What I would appreciate very much, whether you like it, the lousy, the good, the in-between, what you want to see, please start commenting me, because I could hone in and bring, because we are a community service, and we're all volunteers here, the entire staff. So what we want to fashion is the shows for you. And so if you put a comment, I'll be able to curve it into that. Now we want to get back to Selby. So now where I left it off is I have locked horns quite a few times with Selby, but somehow it could bounce off, and somehow that was an integral part of his personality. You knew he was like that. He was staunch, he was upright, and he had this staunch side of him, and then he had this very tender, gentle side of him. Now maybe you could come up with something that...
I would say more tender and gentle. I've never seen Selby anything other than that, anything other than that perfect English gentleman that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and so he was already the secretary when you came.
Right. I've been on the council for probably about 5 or 6 years. So he was already the secretary.
And then how long have you been on the council?
I'm
Probably
trying
a
to
little
remember,
longer.
than Vera, but less time than Selby. Selby was the secretary when I came on, so I've known him as long as I've been on the council, yes, which is probably 7, 8 years, somewhere around there.
I think that Selby was on the council for about 11 years.
Yeah.
Because it was after the show started that he went on to the council.
Everybody
Because
on-
I was originally a council member
Oh, were
too.
you? Right.
Yeah, I was a council member about 16 years ago. I was a council member, and I was a council member for about 4 or 5 years until that I started the show, and I started the kitchen band. I started the show on September 19th, 2000, and the kitchen band on September 11th, 2000. Who knew both would go, you know? And that I was going crazy, so I had to concentrate on the show because it took off like a flying airplane, which is one thing that Selby was a pilot, and he was from England. He was a pilot in the English in England. He was a pilot, and I think that he even flew a plane when he came here. I think at one time he even had a plane when he flew here. How about you, Carol? You got some story on Selby?
Well, in the council, I don't know, he always was one that was willing to do anything, and like they've said, he was the secretary, and just took copious notes and wonderful minutes. I never had the opportunity to butt heads with Selby, but I always had the opportunity to get the hug from him and see that part of his personality. And when he came to the senior center, he always was welcoming to other people there too, whether he knew them or not. He'd introduce himself, and they'd sit down and have a cup of coffee, and you would think that he knew him for 50 years, you know. He just had that gift of making everyone's life that he touched, everyone felt so important. And that's the side of Selby that I saw more often.
Well, one thing that I do appreciate about him is even in any of the correspondence that we did, he always wanted to bring it to a highest level.
Yes.
The highest level of things. And he always would comment, this is the right thing to do. And he had that English starkness in him. And I come from a background of 6 generations of Sicilians. And so that's hot.
Yeah.
And he was cold, you know. So there was clashes that occurred. But when I'm thinking about this, what I'm going to say, I'm going to cry again. Is one of the things that happened was it was just shortly before he died that he called me, and he said, you know, that him and I had these run-ins. I don't know what to call them because they were just that the show was growing and we were both wanting to do it, and it was different personalities, I think. And he apologized to me, and he said, you know, forgive me, you know. And I said, you know, there's really nothing to forgive because we were in this together, him and I, and we were trying to do the best that we had, you know, for the community. And that really touched my heart. And I said to him, you know, and I think he was just, you know, making his peace all the way around before he passed on, you know. And I really miss him. I really miss him. We lived in the same building in Libertyville, Illinois. We lived in in Liberty Towers, and he lived on the same floor, and we would meet each other by the elevator, and meeting each other by the elevator, you know, that he always was so formal in his salutations, you know, and then we'd get down to the nitty gritty, you know, we have to get this done, we have to push this, you know, and he had a pure businessman at heart, and I have to give him credit because he pushed me that he was more than willing to do anything on the computer, but he pushed me. He said, you can do it yourself. You know, you must get in there and do it. And he was right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was right. It was exactly what I needed to do. And, you know, that he had to push me, and I came dragging and kicking into the 21st century. And I'm so happy for his nudging, you know, because he was just such an integral part that we should get it right and get certified in the right way and present it for the community, that we should be a non-for-profit and not advertise, you know, and keep the show as pure as possible, you know. And I am grateful, and I miss him greatly. He's a good friend, and he was a very esteemed colleague. So here we are, you know, 4 women in the same boat, and I know that he had a whole lot of different experiences, that he dealt with alcoholism, but he conquered that. He had the victory over that, and he's very esteemed in the community of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm sure they are doing some sort of memorial for him, and they showed up in great great numbers, you know, at his funeral. Now, I bet he's greatly missed on the council, right? There's a whole.
yes.
Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah.
I think Selby is greatly missed in any avenue by anyone who had the opportunity to touch his life. He just was that type of unique presence. And whether we butted heads with him or not, he knew when to step back and let a person have the opportunity to grow, and he also knew when to step forward and help the person. So he knew that line of where to add more of himself or remove some of himself so the other person could grow. I think Selby's physical person is missed, but I know spiritually he's with each and every one of us.
Well said, yeah.
You know, and he touched, as you mentioned, he touched everyone's life, young, old, different groups, Alcoholics Anonymous, senior centers, people who walked through the park, business people, merchants. He touched everyone's life, and each individual person's life that he touched feels special because his life met with ours.
And I know his passion was for golfing.
Yes.
He loved golfing. He just loved it. And he was so happy when he could get out there on that golf course, you know. But I know he would sit in the lobby of our building, and there would be a court around. He had, you know, he was like the mayor of the building. He had this court. He would hold court, you know. And all the women would just sit around him, you know, and you know, like all the women were crazy about him in the building. They considered it a date if they rode on the elevator with him, you know. Oh, I rode on the elevator with Selby, you know, and he had this wit about him, but what he brought into everything was such a touch of class.
Yes, yes.
He was just a very classy man, and what the producer, Gloria, and I enjoyed about him, we'd say, oh, that's such a snappy hat you have on, you know. Bought it 1946. You know. He had things back from 40 years ago, you know, and we knew it was a very special occasion when he would put that white jacket on. That was either a wedding, he was giving a speech somewhere, or, you know, it was some sort of doing, you know, and he could like mount it with a touch of class, you know, and that we just so admire about him. So, you know, if each one of us could give a little tribute, my tribute to him is, you were right. I needed to become fairly proficient on the computer, Selby, you know. So I just thank you for steering me in that direction and giving me a little kick in the pants and blocking me on my stubborn Sicilian head that I could, you know, convert to a classier way of doing it, you know. And what tribute would you give?
Yeah, I think he tried keeping me straight about protocol during meetings.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be him.
Yep,
Yeah. And no okie dokie for a complete vote. That was not part of protocol. You know, just I will miss him being so debonair, so dashing.
Yeah.
You know, a knight in shining armor, I believe.
Right.
You know, would be also, you know, Selby.
How about you, Norma?
Oh, and he was a knight in shining armor. One time there was a little conflict at a place, and when I got up and left, he said, "Thank you, Norma." And I thought, how appropriate, how wonderful this man is. I mean, he didn't have to do that, but he did.
How about you, Carol?
Well, I just think that I learned so much from him and had such a great respect that no matter when he was walking, even toward the end of his life, no matter what he was walking at, whatever physical, thing he might be going through, he still always had time and really cared about the other person. And he just was one of a kind.
Elegance.
You know?
And I'd like to give tribute to his children,
Yes.
his daughters, and his son at the memorial. I had a long talk with his son. One of the things that he liked, he just loved split pea soup with ham in it.
Yeah.
And at the end, his eating wasn't too good. And so I said to his son, you know, he just loved my split pea soup with ham. When I made it, I always made a container for him. He said, "Oh, he used to make it for me when I was a little boy," you know, and that touched me. And so, you know, we just give tribute to his kids because they took such good care of him,
Yes.
and he had such love around him. I think that contributed to the class and the gentleman that he was. Well, you know, this has gone by so fast. What it's time for when you out there, I'm talking to you, come to the end of your rope. You know what you do? You tie a knot and hang on. You know why? Because the best is yet to come. And what we want you all to do this week is catch the spirit. God bless you. We love you. And we're out.